Happy Friday, August 21st, 2020, and welcome to the 3 things I learned in SaaS, sports, tech, and live events. Number 1, the best ability is availability. Danny Ainge said this the other day. I'm not sure if it's attributable to him, but we've heard this from a lot of different people, and we've seen it in our experience. It's a bloodbath out there in live events right now. Every week, people are getting laid off. Companies are closing. Companies are going under. There's going to be a lot of consolidation, a lot of changes. More on that in a little bit that you guys are going to see over the next few months. But the number one thing is, and also a lot of these businesses don't have the money and time to really focus even on their own core business because they have so many layoffs and furloughs. But there's a number of well-capped businesses out there who are going full speed ahead, and it is a massive advantage in live events right now. In other industries, in SaaS, not so much. There are people continuing to invest in there, but right now you're not seeing a lot of new investment in live events because there's not a timeline for when people are going to return. We've had a number of equity rounds here, and it's important that people understand how those work. Depending on the round, they're usually tied to an amount of runway. So you get an investment, and you have enough runway for anywhere from 11 to 21 months. We always tried to be somewhere on the higher end of that. And you're raising enough so that you can prove that you can get to the next level. And then once you get there, you'll raise again, usually from another business with a different kind of understanding until you get to the point where your business is mature enough that you're profitable and you're using that investment on growth and profitability. Right now, people who raised money in live events within 12 months of the pandemic have a massive advantage because they have cash, which is what people really need. That we're already starting to see it. We're starting to see some companies who are maybe 1 and 2 in their space, in whatever space that was in live events. And it doesn't really matter who was number 1 or who was number 2 or who was here first and who wasn't. It's mattering who was the most capitalized. Some of them are starting to go under. You're going to see that over the next few weeks. We're not going to talk about that now because we are involved in some of those talks. But the reality is this is going to lead to a lot of BK. It's going to lead to a lot of consolidation. It's going to lead to a lot of different changes over the next 3 months. I'll give you another quick story. When I worked at the LA Dodgers, I wasn't the number 1 rep. It's the last time I wasn't the number 1 rep, and I couldn't understand why. How I wasn't outselling the person I was sitting next to on this team. It was because they were coming in on the weekends and answering the inbound phones. And there was no rule against that. I could have done that too. The reality is they were available. I wasn't available at that time. Sometimes the best ability is availability. That's number 1. Number 2, loyalty, which is the unknown rocket fuel of growth. It cannot be bought. It must be earned, and it's been lost in live. There's a lot of companies out there who had massive layoffs and furloughs, and they're going to have a very tough road ahead of them rebuilding their teams because they have choices to make. And look, I'm not saying what they did was the right or wrong thing. We even had some layoffs and furloughs here. But the reality is when you lay somebody off or you furlough them, that's not forgotten. And we already know that. We talk to some of those individuals. They come to us very humbly looking for work, and we talk to them about their experience there, and we see what that loyalty brings and what that loyalty is like when you're working with somebody and around somebody. And let me give you a couple of examples of what that loyalty looks like, whether it's layoffs, furloughs, or whatever else. When I was working at AEG, 20 years ago, I had a supervisor there, the general, as he's known in the business, and he was he taught me more about loyalty in the year and a half I worked for him than I've learned in 20 years since. And the reason was he always had our back, no matter what. Even when we were wrong, he had our back, because in ticket sales, you're the bottom of the barrel when it comes to sports teams. People generally look at the ticket sales people, and then suites and sponsorships are the more glamorous jobs. But not in his world. He didn't see it that way. And for that reason, we were always loyal to him. And I've always been loyal to him and to bosses that were like that. The same thing when I was at StubHub. When I was at StubHub, I was very aggressive in calling around. I wasn't aggressively trying to, push people into what we were doing, but I was touching different businesses. And I had this gentleman from Land America call my boss's boss and chew me out for, calling him and saying, hey, I really think you should use this product. It looks like your company has bought $4 million in tickets off of us for the last 3 months, and we might be able to consolidate that. And he was adamant that I needed to share that number with him, and he called my boss and lit me up. And man, I'd only been working there for a couple of months, so I got that phone call and I dreaded it. And my boss called me, Colin, and he couldn't have been more understanding, more loyal. He just said, look, you're being an aggressive sales guy. You're being respectful of their time and respectful of what they're doing. I'm always going to have your back. It's really hard when words and actions don't align, because when you tell somebody you have their back and you're doing the best thing for them and you don't pay them for 6 months, it doesn't matter what it's called. If it's a furlough or a layoff, the fact is they're not getting a paycheck. And I know there's a lot of businesses out there that are fooling themselves believing that this is going to be something that they're going to be able to work past. And maybe they are. Maybe they're better than I am at this. But there is a lot of damage out there. And some of these big brands are going to have a real hard time building good teams, because you're going to walk in there and ask what happened to the person in front of you. And the answer is not going to be so pretty. So that's number 2. And number 3, the one I have to be careful on, friends like these. It is so hard out there right now. It is very difficult to find work, and it's even harder when everybody's out looking for work and you have people trying to encourage you to stand out from the rest and to leverage a network. Some people who maybe haven't used LinkedIn before, maybe haven't done the best job networking, nobody's going to hold that against anybody, right? Everybody's always looking for the best talent. And the good people out there are going to try to help others. The one thing I learned is that, the lack of authenticity is just something that can't be recovered from. We have people that we meet, we really enjoy them, and they're trying to sell us something, or they're trying to, come work with us or whatever else. And then when they don't get the result they want, they're gone, right? There was no actual rapport or conversation or relationship there. And so when reaching out, when having these conversations with people, if you haven't spoken to somebody in a while, please know that if, for example, in our shoes, we get a lot of these that are reaching out. And the reality is, if somebody wants to come work with us, that is the biggest compliment we can get. I mean, people spend a lot of time on what they do for a living, on their careers, and that is not lost on us. But it's difficult when you have people who show up in your life that want something from you, and then when they don't get what they want, they leave. I had that happen a few years ago with somebody that I knew in college. We weren't exactly friends, but they had lost their job, and all of a sudden, it seemed like we were becoming close friends, and I was always a little bit hesitant to it. Once that person got a new job, I haven't heard from them in 18 months. We all have those friends. We all have those people we only hear from when they want to sell us something, or when they just lost their job and they want to come work for you. We also have people hitting us up on LinkedIn and Twitter and all those things saying, hey, I'm a huge fan of your business. I've been following it forever, et cetera, but we haven't heard from them in 3 to 5 years. It's good enough to tell an entrepreneur or to tell a small business that you like what they're doing. That's a great compliment, and it's enough for us. We're always looking for great people. So what I learned was I need to make sure that I'm being authentic when I'm out there as well. So those are the 3 things for this week. Hopefully we'll see everybody next week.